My fiancé joked that he could have done better during his birthday toast. Everyone laughed, except me. So while he was out celebrating, I packed my things and left without a word. Now he's flooding me with calls saying, I'm 31F, and until very recently, I was engaged to a man named Nolan, 33M. We'd been together for just over 4 years. On paper, everything looked good. We had a comfortable life, a shared apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a cat named Marbles who adored him and only barely tolerated me, and a long list of mutual friends who referred to us as the steady couple. You know the type, no big fights, no dramatic breakups or scandals, just two people living their lives with synced calendars and shared grocery lists. But what most people didn't see, what I hadn't let them see, was the quiet erosion happening just below the surface. The little cracks that started forming maybe a year or so into our engagement, the subtle ways Nolan shifted, and how, slowly but surely, I started to feel like a prop in his life rather than a partner. It wasn't always like that. When we met, he was warm, kind, even. He remembered the smallest things about me, like how I hate overhead lights and always keep a lamp on instead, or that I have to sleep with socks no matter the weather. We met through friends at a small dinner gathering, and he was charming without being smug, funny without needing to be the center of attention. I was drawn to that. Our first year together felt like something out of a novel. He cooked for me, showed up at my job with flowers for no reason, even made an effort to get along with my brother Milo, who's not the easiest person to win over. He told me I made him feel grounded, that I was the first person he could really see a future with. I believed him. But as time passed, the gestures slowed. Then they stopped altogether. And while I didn't expect grand romantic overtures all the time, I'm not naive. I started to feel the shift. Conversations turned transactional. We'd talk about bills, laundry, his coworkers, his mother's endless list of complaints, but rarely about us. Rarely about anything real. At first, I told myself it was normal. Every relationship has its ups and downs. People get comfortable. Life gets in the way. Then came the comments. The offhand remarks masked as jokes. He'd laugh about how I never make a full cup of coffee without leaving a ring on the counter, or that I always get too emotional over things that don't matter. In front of friends, he'd joke that I was the serious one, or the spreadsheet queen, or the one who makes sure I don't burn the house down. They weren't cruel, not obviously, but they chipped away at me in small, quiet ways. It was his birthday that finally brought things into focus. He'd insisted on having a get-together at our apartment. I wasn't thrilled about hosting. I just finished a stressful week at work, but I agreed because he wanted it, and I wanted to make him happy. I spent the day cleaning, prepping snacks, rearranging furniture to accommodate people. I even set up a slideshow of photos from past birthdays, including ones from when he was a kid. I thought it would be nostalgic and sweet. People started arriving around 6. There were about 20 in total, friends from his office, a couple of his cousins, and 2 of his college buddies who drove in from out of town. I didn't know everyone well, but I smiled, offered drinks, and did my best to play the part. Nolan was in his element, laughing loudly, telling stories, nudging me in the ribs when he recalled something embarrassing I'd done during a trip last summer. I tripped in front of a street performer in Spain, and he still brings it up. Then came the toast. He stood on one of the dining chairs, glass raised, asking everyone to hush. I stepped into the kitchen to refill a bowl of chips but leaned against the doorframe to listen. He thanked everyone for coming, made a joke about turning 33 and still not being able to keep a plan alive. People chuckled. Then he glanced over at me and smiled. This one, he said, nodding toward me. She keeps me in check. I'm not the easiest guy to deal with, and somehow she's still around. People laughed again. I forced a smile, though my chest tightened just a little. She plans everything. All the details you see tonight? That's her. Honestly, I just show up and hope I'm not in the way. Another round of laughter. Then he added, she's got the patience of a saint. And, I mean, let's be honest, I probably could have done better, but here we are. Laughter erupted. My ears started ringing. He was grinning. Just grinning like he'd said the most harmless thing in the world. A few of his friends clapped him on the back. One of his cousins let out an exaggerated, "Oh," like we were in middle school and someone had just roasted a classmate. And me? I just stood there, frozen. I don't think he even noticed my expression. He stepped down, handed his glass to someone, and walked off toward the hallway, calling out for someone to join him for a game. I set the bowl down on the counter and went to the bedroom. I didn't slam the door or cry. I just sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the carpet, listening to the faint sound of laughter and music from the living room. And that's when the decision started forming. Quietly, without drama, without a big outburst. I'd had enough. But I didn't act right away. I waited. And when Nolan left later that night to meet a few of his friends for a guy's nightcap, that's when I made my move. I didn't rush. I didn't throw things into a bag or yank clothes off hangers in some dramatic flourish. That would have been too loud, too emotional. Instead, I moved slowly, methodically, like someone following instructions to assemble a very quiet kind of escape. First, I went to the bathroom. I grabbed my essentials, my skincare, toothbrush, the medications I kept tucked behind the mirror cabinet. Then I moved to the closet. I took only what I needed: a few pairs of jeans, some shirts, comfortable shoes. I left the dresses he liked, the ones he complimented when we went out, hanging where they were. Marbles watched me from the foot of the bed. She didn't meow, didn't move, just blinked slowly at me like she knew something was off. I sat down beside her and scratched behind her ears. "You're staying," I whispered. "He needs someone to talk to. And you already like him more." She blinked again. I left her food and extra water, just in case he got too distracted to remember. I didn't leave a note. I thought about it. I even held a pin above the edge of a receipt I found in my bag. But what was there to say that he hadn't already ignored? That he hadn't joked away or brushed off with a laugh and a wave? Instead, I pulled out my phone and booked a rideshare to my friend Talia's place. She and I had grown apart a little over the past year, mostly because Nolan said she was too opinionated and liked to stir the pot. I'd stopped inviting her over after he said she made things awkward. I thought I was keeping the peace. Now I see I was just shrinking myself to fit inside his version of a tidy life. She answered on the first ring. "Hey," I said. "Is it okay if I come stay for a few days?" There was a pause. "Of course. Are you okay?" I felt my throat tighten. "Not really, but I'm trying to be." She didn't ask for details. She just gave me the code to her building and said she'd leave the hallway light on. By the time Nolan texted me, just a simple, "You good? Everything all right at the place?" I was already at her apartment, curled up on her worn-out couch with a blanket that smelled like lavender and old detergent. I didn't reply. The next morning, he called. Twice. I let them go to voicemail. Then the messages started. "Hey, where are you? You didn't come to bed last night. Can you just text me back so I know you're okay?" Then came the shift. "So we're playing games now?" Followed by, "If this is about last night, you seriously need to learn how to take a joke." Each message chipped away at something inside me, but not in the way he probably thought. Not with guilt. With clarity. I hadn't even told my parents yet. They adored Nolan, or rather, the version of him he showed at family dinners. He always brought a gift for my mom, usually her favorite candle scent, and talked shop with my dad about tools and car parts, even though Nolan couldn't change a tire if his life depended on it. I'd have to call them eventually, explain things. But not yet. For now, I just needed space. Stillness. A quiet room that didn't hum with invisible tension. But Nolan wasn't done. That evening, he left a message that made me sit up straight on the couch, heart racing a little. "You walking out like that makes me look bad, you know." And that's when I realized something that chilled me more than the silence of Talia's living room. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about how he looked. I put my phone down and stared out her window at the street below. There was a couple walking a dog, kids riding scooters past the mailboxes, someone carrying groceries in reusable bags. All of them were living their lives while mine felt like it had tilted off course. But something had cracked open, and once it did, more began to pour through. Memories I hadn't thought about in months. Like the time he corrected me in front of his boss when I'd mispronounced a restaurant name. or when he offered to fix my resume because it sounded too aggressive, or how, when I told him I wanted to apply for a leadership role at work, he'd said, "Wouldn't that be kind of a stretch?" It hadn't started with the toast. It had started long before, and I had ignored it. Until now. I hadn't told him I was done yet. But the way my fingers hovered over the screen, debating whether or not to block his number, I think he could sense it. Because that's when he sent the message that really shook me. The one that made me realize this wasn't over. Not even close. He said, "You walking out like that? It's not just immature, it's selfish. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? You really want people thinking I lost my fiancée because she couldn't handle a joke? You're making me look like the bad guy, and I won't let that happen." That last part, "I won't let that happen," stuck with me. It wasn't concern. It wasn't confusion. It was something else. It was a warning. A subtle, entitled reminder that in Nolan's world, I was supposed to protect his image, even if it meant sacrificing my own dignity. Talia read the message over my shoulder. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me a mug of tea and sat beside me with a look I hadn't seen in years. Not pity, something closer to fierce protectiveness. "You okay?" she asked again, quieter this time. I nodded, but I wasn't sure it was true. For the next few days, Nolan tried every tone imaginable. His texts were a rotating wheel, some warm and nostalgic. "Remember that weekend trip to the lake house? I miss that version of us." Others cold and sharp. "If you don't come back soon, I'm telling your parents you left without explanation." One message even said, "This is just a tantrum. You'll come to your senses." That one made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because of how familiar it felt. He'd always painted himself as the calm, collected one, the rational voice of reason. But really, it was control, disguised as composure. I'd started to see it more clearly as I settled into Talia's apartment. She didn't hover. She didn't ask for the full story unless I offered it. But she listened when I talked, really listened. And it helped me trace back the red flags I'd ignored, like how Nolan kept the financial side of our life under wraps. We had a shared savings account, but only he had the login details. "I'll manage it," he'd said early on. "You hate numbers anyway." He wasn't wrong. I'm not a spreadsheet person, but still, I just let him take over. Or how he used to joke about how I was the safe choice. Not the fun one, not the wild one, just the one who'd always be there when he got bored of everyone else. I used to laugh along, thinking it was just his way of being cheeky. But now I wasn't so sure. I knew I had to do something. Something that made it clear I wasn't going to vanish quietly like he probably expected. So I started thinking, really thinking about what mattered to Nolan most. And the answer was obvious, his image. He thrived on looking put together. His social media presence was curated to a fault. Every photo was filtered just enough, every caption just the right mix of humble brag and charm. He posted about me only when it made him look better, celebrating my promotion as if he had helped me earn it, uploading pictures of our apartment that made it seem like he decorated the place when I'd done every inch of it myself. And more than that, he prided himself on being seen as the reliable one in his family. His parents adored him, or rather, they worshipped the idea of him. He was the successful older son, the one who bought his dad a fancy watch last Father's Day and helped his sister with her business, even though I'd written the email template she used. His family already saw me as background noise. Polite, supportive, quiet. Well, not anymore. I started with the finances. I had no access to the shared account, but I did have every receipt from the past year tucked away in my desk drawer, receipts for things I paid for but he took credit for. The new rug in the living room? Mine. The dinner he threw for his parents last Thanksgiving? Paid on my card. Even the deposit for our wedding venue, which he told everyone came out of his bonus, yeah, that was mine too. I gathered them all, scanned them into a neat little folder, and wrote a calm, direct email to his parents. No drama, no insults, just a timeline, the receipts, a note saying I wouldn't be moving forward with the wedding, that I wished them well, and then I did something that made Talia nearly drop her tea when I told her. I posted a message to our shared friend group chat. I didn't rant. I didn't spill every detail. I just said, "Hey everyone. Just wanted to let you know Nolan and I are no longer engaged. I've moved out, and I appreciate the space to sort things out privately. If you've got questions about why, I suggest you ask Nolan. I'm sure he'll be honest." That was it. The silence that followed was almost louder than any reply, but not for long. Apparently, one of Nolan's coworkers had been at the birthday party. She messaged me privately, said she was sorry for what he said, and that it wasn't the first time she'd seen him put someone down to get a laugh. Another friend said they always felt uncomfortable with how Nolan teased me, but didn't know if it was their place to say anything. It started small, but word spread, and the cracks in Nolan's armor, his carefully polished image, began to show. And when he finally called me again, I answered, because I wanted to hear what he'd say. His voice was tight, controlled. "You really think dragging my name through the mud is the mature way to handle this?" "I didn't drag anything," I said, calm as ever. "I just stopped covering for you." There was silence. Then he said something that chilled me, something that proved this wasn't just about me leaving. It was about losing control. "You have no idea what you've started." And that's when I realized he wasn't going to let this go quietly. He was going to fight back. But what Nolan didn't know, what he never bothered to learn, was that when I'm cornered, I don't run. I rebuild. And I had more than a few cards left to play. Nolan had always believed I was the quiet one, the agreeable one. He once told a friend, while I stood right there, that I was low maintenance, like that was some sort of compliment. I remember how they laughed, and how I smiled along because that's what I was supposed to do. Be easy, be manageable, be grateful. But I wasn't smiling now. After he said, "You have no idea what you've started," I didn't respond. I just ended the call and stared at the wall for a long time. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt steady. That was the difference now. I wasn't trying to argue. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just finally done pretending. The next morning, Talia found me at her kitchen table, laptop open, notes spread out in front of me. "What are you doing?" she asked, cautiously hopeful. "Getting organized," I said. "Organized for what?" I looked up. For everything. The first thing I did was call the venue. The wedding deposit had been under my name. The coordinator, Ruth, remembered me immediately. I told her calmly that the wedding was off and asked about transferring the date to someone else. She was kind, surprisingly so, and said she'd do her best to get part of the deposit refunded. "Has your fiancé called about canceling too?" she asked near the end of the call. "No," I said. "But if he does, don't take any changes unless they come from me. He doesn't have signing authority." Ruth paused. Then she said, "Understood." Next, I reached out to a few mutual acquaintances, not friends, not family, just people who had worked with us on wedding prep. The photographer, the caterer, even the guy who was designing our monogram for the invitations. It wasn't just about canceling things. It was about taking back my name. And that's when I remembered the wedding website. Nolan had built it. Of course, he insisted he had a better eye for aesthetics. He chose the colors, the font, the engagement story. He edited my part of the bio 3 times before telling me, "Yours sounded too stiff." Mine had included real things. How we met, how he made me laugh the first time we talked, how he used to bring me my favorite pastries after work. He changed it to something vague, safe. They met through friends and knew it was right. It had sounded hollow even then. I logged into the back end. I still had the password because he'd once made me update the RSVP count while he was on a work call. I could have just deleted the whole thing, but I didn't. Instead, I changed the text at the top of the homepage to a single sentence. "This wedding has been canceled. If you'd like to know why, feel free to ask the groom." Then I locked the site and logged out. That move, I later learned, is what set everything in motion. Because Nolan's cousin, Ellis, had been checking the site for updates. Ellis was the kind of guy who thrived on group chats and speculation, and once he saw that line, he couldn't resist sharing a screenshot with his siblings. And just like that, the story started to unravel. Nolan tried to get ahead of it. He posted a carefully worded note on his personal account. Something about mutual decisions and taking time to reflect. He even made himself sound noble, thanking me for the memories and saying he wished me well. But I'd already spoken to his sister. Her name's Colette. She and I were never close, but we got along fine until Nolan started criticizing her too. He once called her dramatic because she cried during a toast at her own wedding. When I told him it was sweet, he just rolled his eyes and said, "You girls cry at anything." Colette reached out a day after the website was updated. "He's been downplaying everything," she said on the phone. "Said you left because you got cold feet. But if you're reaching out to vendors and changing the website like that, I figured there's more to the story." So I told her, not everything, just enough. The birthday toast. The years of quiet dismissals. The way he had twisted my voice into something smaller than it was meant to be. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she let out a long breath. "He always gets like this when things don't go his way," she said. "I saw it growing up. He knows how to make people feel like they're crazy when they call him out." There was a pause. Then she added, "You're not crazy." That shouldn't have hit me as hard as it did. But it did. After that, I began to get more messages. Some from people I didn't even expect. Old coworkers. A friend from college I hadn't spoken to in years. They all said different things, but there was one common thread. They'd seen it too. The way Nolan talked over people. The way he used charm to cover up condescension. How he made himself the victim in every minor disagreement. That's when I knew I wasn't just walking away from a wedding. I was walking away from a carefully built illusion. But Nolan wasn't finished. He showed up at Talia's building 2 days later. I wasn't home. Talia called me as soon as he left. "He looked off," she said. Not angry, not upset, just tense, like he was holding something in. "What did he say?" "He asked if you were here. I told him you weren't." He stared past me for a second and said, "She's making a mistake. She doesn't know what she started." Then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. That night, I found an envelope slid under Talia's door. Inside was a printed photo of Nolan and me at a friend's wedding 6 months ago. I was laughing in the photo, not even aware of the camera. He had his arm around me, smiling. The caption, typed in the corner like a quote, read, "This was real. Don't forget that." I didn't contact Nolan after I found the photo. I didn't call, text, or reply to his increasingly erratic messages. I didn't confront him about the envelope. I just quietly documented it, photographed everything, and told Talia to keep it in a drawer in case anything escalated. It wasn't fear driving me at that point. It was focus. Because the last piece I had planned wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It wasn't designed for shock. It was patient. I knew how much Nolan cared about image, appearances, reputation. And not just socially, professionally, too. He worked in corporate consulting, where being seen as calm, charismatic, and trustworthy was part of the job. His whole persona was built around being the kind of man you could hand a meeting to last minute and trust him to charm a room full of clients. So I waited. About a week later, his company hosted their annual gala, a formal event with partners, potential clients, and industry insiders. Nolan had once described it as the place careers are made. He used to joke that his real job was working the room, not the actual office work. He still hadn't removed me from the mailing list. So I knew when it was happening, where, and who would be there. I didn't go, but I sent something in my place. Remember those receipts I mentioned? The wedding deposit, the dinners, the holidays I paid for but he claimed as gifts? I'd organized everything, lined them up with his public posts and announcements, the ones where he said things like surprised her with a trip and treating the in-laws to dinner, earned it. I printed out a selection, included a calm but pointed letter addressed to his HR department, not an accusation, just a request to clarify how his personal expenses aligned with his recent reimbursement claims, and sent another packet. Simplified, but just as clear, to the general contact email for his company's compliance office. And then I waited. Again. It took a few days. Then the fallout began. Talia came into the kitchen with her phone in hand, eyes wide. "Did you see this?" she asked, holding up a post from one of Nolan's coworkers. It was vague but telling. Funny how some people think they're untouchable. Turns out, receipts speak louder than smiles. More followed. Quiet whispers on social media. A LinkedIn update announcing that Nolan was stepping away from his position to pursue other opportunities. Translation? He was asked to leave. He texted me once more after that. Just once. I hope you're proud of yourself. And strangely, I was. But not because of the job loss. That wasn't the point. I wasn't trying to ruin him. I wasn't even trying to hurt him. I just wanted him to see clearly for once what it felt like when someone stood their ground and refused to carry his carefully constructed image for him. I didn't respond. Instead, I quietly moved forward. I got a new apartment. It's small, but peaceful. I sleep better now, not because the bed is better, but because I don't wake up holding my breath, wondering if the person beside me is in a good mood or not. I picked up painting again. Something I'd stopped because Nolan once laughed at a piece I showed him and said, "You're talented, but it's a hobby, not a calling." Funny thing is, someone saw one of my pieces at a local exhibit and asked if I take commissions. I said yes. Talia and I still talk every night over tea. She says I look different now, like someone who stopped shrinking herself to fit inside someone else's expectations. I guess she's right. Sometimes people ask me if I miss him. And the honest answer is no. I miss the version of myself I used to be before I thought being chosen was the same as being loved. But I've got her back now. And she's not going anywhere.